Johnversations Podcast. This is episode 25. My guest today is a comedian, actor, singer, crazy dancer, writer, and so much more. She's the co-creator of the Broadway World Award winning Two Blondes and is the co-host of the Generation Gab podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to the very talented Miss Chase O'Donnell. Chase, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for that beautiful intro. That was very lovely. Thank you.
Oh, I do research. I've read
your research.
I've read interviews. I've watched clips. Like I was telling you before, I was first introduced to you. You were featuring for Christina P., which I'm sure a lot of people have seen you on Where My Mom's At. It was a very good episode.
Thank you. That was some of the, I really prepared for that. If you saw the PowerPoint, there was a lot of work that went into that episode. So yes, I appreciate it.
You definitely came prepared and I saw you. That was the show. I'm sure you remember, but Sherry Shepard did the pop-in. And we were there, and there was another gentleman who was like kind of the he was like the MC for the evening, and I feel terrible because I don't remember his name, and he brought you up, and I just remember being so blown away by I think you had like 10-15 minutes or something like that when you're doing a feature spot.
Yeah, because Sherry popped in, so I did probably 10. Or it was 10 or 15 because I had to shorten it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I'm not a comedian, I am a giant fan of stand-up. I grew up watching SNL and, my dad playing me like Eddie Murphy Raw and all this stuff. So like, it's kind of been in my DNA. So like when I saw you, I was immediately impressed. And I think what really caught me is your presentation. It's almost like you sneak the punchlines in, where it's not like here's a big like I'm gonna like kind of fill the story up and then just hit you with one, but like you're hitting those little punchlines and you're very almost like sly with them. I don't want to give away any of the bits or anything like that for people who want to check it out, but it's I think what you do is an art.
You're really making me you're boosting my ego. Thank you so much.
Well, you have a show tonight, so hopefully you can kind of carry that with you. Go in and be like rock star status.
Those Zoom stand-up shows are very different, and it's because everything's been on Zoom, especially in LA. Everything's closed, but thank you for that. That's really nice. Were you there the show? There was, because Sherry actually popped in for a few. Were you there the night somebody fainted in the audience?
No.
Oh, good. Okay. Because that one, someone fainted right before I came on. And the host didn't go like, let's hold, He just said, okay, and coming to the stage, Chase O'Donnell. So I walked on to the crowd just being like, help, what do we do? Oh my God, screaming, everybody not knowing what was going on. People were calling for doctors. And I was on stage just like not knowing what to do. I've never been in that situation, and it was very uncomfortable for me. And I just started doing my jokes instead of acknowledging what was going on. Instead of being like, is everyone okay? I just went straight into my routine, and no one was listening, and it was very uncomfortable. So I'm glad you missed that one.
I can imagine it's probably hard to like get an Abercrombie t-shirt joke in when like everyone's like, ah.
Well, if you remember my first joke, I was saying like it was my high school reunion coming up. So all I did was I said, oh no, like this is so scary. You want to know what else is scary? I've got my 10-year high school reunion coming up. And that was my segue. And I just went straight into it. And it was the most uncomfortable 10-15 minutes of my life.
Well, that is, first of all, a great way to capitalize on an opportunity. I mean, you saw the window, you took it. So that's quick thinking to be able to be like, well, let me just kind of use this to jump into my material here. But
Anyway, I also on the stage didn't know what was going on either, so I didn't have any way to like comfort the crowd or like so anyways, I learned a big lesson that night on how to handle things when people faint.
Well, and I mean, Zany's, at least here in Nashville, we've been to a couple shows, and the crowd can tend to get. I like going to the late shows because I feel like the late shows for some reason always have a different energy than like the 7:30.
Totally.
But I feel like sometimes that could be a good thing, and especially my experiences here. The late show, they tend to be a little bit more rowdy, so you have more than enough to kind of combat with, and then have somebody feigning on top of that.
Well, that's the thing. Like, people are much drunker at the later shows, so they were definitely intoxicated. And at Zany's specifically in Nashville, you have that like second level balcony, so it gets really hot up there. And they said that people faint all the time at Zany's after that happened.
Yeah, that's like, funny. Okay. That's actually right where we were sitting. We were on the balcony right center because that's
okay.
Yeah, that's my favorite place to sit. If you can't get, my wife is terrified that someone is gonna like, we'll go see somebody and then all of a sudden it's gonna be like crowd work time.
Oh my God.
Like, what's up, Red? She's got red hair. So someone's just like,
I always sit in the back of comedy shows too. It's terrifying.
But yeah, because I mean, like you think that, these people do this for a living, they're sharp-witted. If they want to make a joke at your expense, like they've got the practice and the ammunition to do so.
Well, most of the time, I have to say, when comedians do crowd work, they have they already know what they're gonna say regardless of who's in the audience. So like they'll have specific jokes for different types of people. So the reason they're so witty is because they've already practiced that specific joke on the crowd so many times that it seems like they're doing crowd work, but it's all prepared.
Yeah, so they just pick one that they know kills, and then they're like,
oh, this person works with my joke, so here we go. Yeah.
You look a little meek. You're going to be the one I'm going after. So that's awesome. I didn't know that. I mean, I know there's some people. I know there's some people out there that's kind of like their thing is, they and I did want to talk to you a little bit about this as far as like your writing process and things of that nature. But I know there's some people that they'll go and kind of work stuff out and things like that, and then just be like, oh, well, here's this person. Let me try a little crowd work or see what I can pull. Things. So I guess I never really thought of it as like, oh, I've got this prepared. Let me just find someone who kind of fits the narrative to the joke.
No, they definitely. Well, okay. There's obviously some people who don't have them prepared, but when someone's doing crowd work and it's going over extremely well, it's because usually it's been practiced before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know, because then,
and Christina even has given me tips on that, because like she's been such a mentor to me and just has taken me under her wing, and she'll tell me stuff like that, like do crowd work but know what you're going to say to them and know how you're going to respond. And so, yeah, she's helped me with that too.
Yeah, and I mean, she's a beast. If there is a person who can control a room, like,
oh my gosh, she's incredible. I've been learning so much from her. It's unbelievable.
Well, let me ask you this. So, how did that? I mean, because she was doing before COVID and quarantine and everything happened, which, by the way, you have been releasing, guys, if you're listening, please go to Chase O'Donnell's Instagram. We're going to link it up, but you had that dating in quarantine.
Oh yeah.
And I played it for my wife today, and I was like, this is so funny, because it's very representative, I think, of what's going on, but it's like,
thank you.
Oh no,
I was releasing a lot of stuff at the beginning of quarantine, and then honestly, once the Black Lives Matter and everything started happening, I've kind of just taken a step back and trying to amplify other voices. And it's been a little bit of a break for me doing content, but it's been a nice little break.
Yeah. And I think too, for especially, I mean, like I said, I'm not I write songs.
Nice.
I've had a history of playing in bands and touring and stuff like that. So I started this podcast because I just missed kind of like putting something out into the world. But I think you're right. I think right now with, all of the crazy injustices and things like that are going on, it's kind of a double-edged sword. At least for me, it's like, like, I want to support what's going on. I want to make sure that I'm pushing that into the focus, but like, this is also something I'm very passionate about doing, and trying to figure out like, how can the two work together? Like we have a t-shirt up in our merch shop that if you buy that shirt, everything goes to 8 Can't Wait. So it's like, yeah, if you, you know,
your merch is your sponsor. Is that correct?
Yes, it's my only sponsor. This is a bedroom podcast. So that's all we got. But
just a little plug for the merch store, everybody.
Well, I appreciate it. So, you know, I wanted to ask you, because from, like I said, I did some research on you and reading, and I understand that you grew up in a creative household, right? Because again, you know, like I said in the intro, yes, you're a stand-up comedian. But when I saw you at Zany's, they brought you out and you did the entire Want to Dance with Somebody dance like flawlessly. And my wife is very big into like hip hop dance and stuff like that. So she was just like, yeah, like, super impressed. So it seems like, you know, you've got, I mean, co-creating off Broadway shows and stuff like that. It seems like you've got a creative vibe that just runs through you in general. So kind of talk to me a little bit about, where did that come from? I mean, was it your parents or?
Yeah, well, definitely from a creative family, because my mom was a dancer, and she was my sister and I's dance teacher growing up. So I was in dance from like the moment I could walk, and dance has a lot of performative, you know, it's very, there's a lot of acting when you dance, if you're doing the Nutcracker and playing a role. So I think the acting bug came to me through dance. And I would try to make everything funny. If I was in like a dance, I would try to be funny in the dance, which isn't, you know, that's not where you are funny. So anyways, I then went to a performing arts high school, and that's when I really started focusing on acting. And again, in any acting scene, I would just try to make it funny. So
that's like your default, just like
I just really enjoy making things funny, or like making people laugh. It's always been in my DNA. My dad is also one of the funniest people I know, and I think that has something to do with it. He's also a musician like yourself, and he's a writer. Cool. So lots of creativity in the family, and there was never like, I sometimes say that I wish my parents had been like, you can get a normal job. Like you can get a job as a doctor, or you can get a job. An
accountant is a steady like paycheck.
You can make a steady paycheck and live a very like steady life. And instead there was never that conversation. It was always like, of course you're going to go into theater. Like that's just like, I think I came from a family that was artists. So it was just like never a question that I wouldn't do art or theater. And so I went to school for theater, and my theater department was very into creating your own work. So by your senior year, you had a one-person show. Like everything you did was just writing and creating it yourself. And I think that had a really big impact on how then I led my 20s in the real world. I was auditioning and still acting, but I started just like, that's when I wrote the 2-person show, which was based off my 1-person show in college, and then stand up too, because you just get to write it and perform it. So I think that came from my college experience, which was very much just like create your own work. And that's pretty much what I've done the past like 6-7 years out of college, has just been like doing it myself.
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, I think it's being a creative person, because I was in the opposite side of that spectrum. My mom played guitar growing up, and I feel bad, I've talked about it before, but for her graduation gift, she got like a beautiful like 12-string Martin, like 1970s something, like just beautiful guitar. And then when I was 2 years old, I jumped on the bed and went right through the back of it. And so she was like, well, I don't play guitar anymore.
Oh no.
But I think that's where I kind of got like I like playing music and writing
Mm-hmm.
songs and, was like, I'm going to be in a band. But I always kind of got the opposite, which is like, it's fun to do this. But like, being an accountant or like, you should probably still go to college. So, when this doesn't work out, so it's
honestly, I wish that was how I was parented. I think that's how I'm going to parent my kids, because going into this professionally is so brutal. It's really been brutal. I mean, it's really, really fun when things are going well, but there's so many times when it's just like such a lull, or just like you see all your friends getting parts, or it's just like there's no certainty, and it's been difficult, and I've had to really work on meditation, all the stuff that just like gets you out of your head about all of it. And so I think there's pluses and minuses to both parenting choices of having your kid go into the arts or to have that be the hobby.
Yeah. And I can imagine. Yeah, I tell my wife we live in Tennessee. So right now, like, COVID is crazy here. Dr. Burks was just here being like, you should shut everything down.
Really quick on that
Yeah.
topic, one of my friends is a comedian. He just moved to Nashville.
Oh, no way.
To do comedy, because he said all the comedy clubs are open in Nashville. But have they closed down, or they're still open, and that's why it's really bad?
So right now, most of the like quote unquote bars are, it's weird because if you can say that you primarily serve food,
Mm-hmm.
then they would consider you a restaurant and you could stay open. Zanies, I believe, I haven't gotten an email from them. I know that they were open, and then the infamous DL Hughley passing out happened. And then you found out the next day, it was like, oh yeah, I've got COVID. And I was just, talking to all these people in this room. And so they shut down for a little bit after that to do like a really good cleaning, make sure nobody got sick. And then I believe they're open and doing shows again now.
Okay. Yeah, there's no shows in LA. So that's crazy that it's happening there. But okay, so go on. I cut you off.
No, it's okay. But I tell my wife all the time that like, we have way more of a liberal mindset than I think a lot of people down here have. And I was like, man, if I was like 100 pounds lighter and a little bit more handsome, I think we would do well in California. But I'm not like a giant dude, but if I move to California, I'm morbidly obese. So it's like
I'm obese in California too. Oh, it's terrible.
So, I know that because I think, as much as people love stand-up comedy, I don't think that a lot of people really, I can equate it almost to like a band that's like trying to get a record deal or something like that. Like, you see somebody on a Comedy Central special, and then you see somebody, maybe get like a Netflix or an Amazon special or something like that. But I don't think a lot of people really think that or consider that like you've spent years before that kind of grinding it out in clubs. And I mean, I know a lot of people say like, you're not really a comedian until, you've been in comedy 10 years. And then it's, so, what is it, I guess? Cause I feel like, if that's something that you're passionate about and you've said like, this is what I'm going to do. And you've set your mind to it, nose to the grindstone. What is it about what you do allows you to kind of push through those? Like, I mean, cause I'm sure for everybody it's different, but what is it about getting up on stage and performing for people? What kind of feeling does that give you that makes all that, like, if something doesn't go your way or if you're going through a hard time, like what makes you able to push through that?
That's a really good question. I think it's the first thing that came to my mind was the honestly, it's like, okay, well, I've kind of decided that I'm pursuing this. So every rejection or every time it goes bad, that's me knowing like, okay, I'm putting in my time. It's going to get better. This is what you have to do. So I think I've like had this in my mind. I already know this is what I'm doing. So failure isn't an option. I just have to keep going. But also, I guess to your point, when I'm on stage and it goes well and people are laughing and it's just like, it's a wonderful feeling. So maybe that's also what I've held on to. Like the highs are very high, the lows are very low. So it's just holding on to those highs.
It's like choosing being bipolar for a depression or for a career. You're just like,
Yeah.
I feel
Oh
all this
my
dopamine. I feel amazing. And then,
brother. I mean, yeah. So that's probably what it is. I also just, I mean, everything I know is comedy. That's all I've put my focus into since probably like 15. So I don't know. I'll give it a few more years. I'll probably hit a point where if the lows are getting too low, I'll, I'll, I'll
well,
move
and I
on.
know, I mean, you also write, I mean, you write,
Yeah.
are you still writing for the National Lampoon podcast?
Yeah, but that's actually since COVID, because we were all recording together. That's stopped, so that'll come back. But I've been writing scripts for ABC Mouse. I don't know if you know that app. It's for little kids. But I've been writing scripts for that just to make some income during this time, and I've been writing just like funny articles for Slackjaw or Points in Case or any of those websites that publish funny articles. I've gotten into writing funny articles since COVID.
Well, and I feel like, and by the way, if you send the links, if you email me those links, I'll put them up in the show notes. Cause I feel like,
Cool. Yeah.
especially right now with how crazy the world is, I think, if somebody can sit down and read something that kind of lightens it up, or, I mean, it's definitely worth taking the couple minutes and giving yourself that treat. You know what I mean? So,
Okay. I'll send you one of the articles.
yeah, please. Yeah. Send them over. So cause I want to make sure that, anything that you do, we're putting out there. So, like, is that kind of, because talking about National Lampoon, I again, my dad was really into that when I was younger, and I know that like they used to do all like a National Lampoon like radio show. So it's really cool that they've adapted that to do essentially the same thing but do it in modern times. Like how has that experience been as far as getting to be, I mean, because National Lampoon is, I mean, in the film world and the comedy world, I mean, it's like, they're on Mount Rushmore, like the not racist comedy Mount Rushmore. So
well, it's so funny, and I'm so happy you know National Lampoon, because a lot of times I would tell people I write for National Lampoon and they're like, what? Because it's kind of not as popular, obviously, as it was when it came out. But it's been really amazing because Tony Hendra, who started National Lampoon, has kind of been our boss, our mentor, if you will. He isn't there all the time anymore, but he'll like pop in, and he's great. And everyone involved is really, I just really look up to everyone. So that's been really fun. And like you mentioned, I took UCB. I went through UCB. So I was in their sketch writing program, and that really helped me with the writing pretty much sketches for the radio show. So that was a lot of fun.
Now, do you still perform with UCB?
I haven't since I started touring with Christina.
Okay.
Because I had to kind of pick one or the other. It just takes up so much time, but I love performing at UCB, or I did Groundlings too, which is another character type improv place. I think those like really warm my heart. I'm less nervous doing characters than I am doing stand-up. So I think it's just a lot of fun for me to do UCB.
What do you think it is about doing a character as opposed to like being yourself? Because I mean, for people who might be listening, who's like, what is UCB and the Groundlings? Like, I mean, geez, going back, like I've just showed my daughter Pee-wee's Playhouse, and Paul Rubens came from the Groundlings, and Melissa McCarthy was in the Groundlings, and UCB had, Amy Poehler, and I mean, just Matt Walsh, just so many people. So I think was Zach Galifianakis, I think was UCB too, or maybe I might be
don't know. Probably like Second City, or I don't know actually, but
yeah, I might be misquoting that. So I apologize, but like it's there's so many so many talented people that have kind of ascended through those ranks, and like that's where they got their start. And it's exactly that. It's improv and characters, and here's the situation, we're gonna throw you the ball, now where are you gonna go with it? So like what do you think the difference is to you, or what do you think it is about being a character that you prefer over or I don't even want to say prefer, but maybe like lean into a little bit more?
Easier. I think being a character it's easier because it's not you. So when I go on stage as a character and nobody laughs, it's okay, because that just means my character wasn't funny. Whereas if I go on stage as Chase O'Donnell doing stand-up, telling you stories that I think are going to make you laugh, it's like it hits harder when no one laughs, because it's like they're just rejecting you. They're not rejecting a character. So it's just easier to like be more confident and have more fun, and you're not as worried because you're somebody else. And that's why with Two Blondes, the show I did in New York, it was so much fun because I wrote it and it was all my words, but I was this really dumb blonde and it wasn't me. So it just was, it's more fun sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of clips on YouTube. There's a Two Blondes reel, and it's hilarious. And I think, do you find like, is it easier for you to maybe push boundaries a little bit more when you're not like, when it's not, because I feel like you could say something way more outlandish, and if you're in a character, there's way less blowback than like, well, did you hear what Chase said?
Totally. When you're a character, definitely. There's just so much more freedom. And you're not, I just find that I'm not as nervous. And believe me, I am known, if anyone knows me, they know how nervous I get before anything. So even though I'm saying I get less nervous being a character, for some reason, I'm just a very nervous person. So before I go on stage for anything, I'm a nervous wreck. But with stand-up, it's like to the 100th degree because I'm just me. It's easier when it's a character.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that, like I said, it's like if you're playing somebody, you can say something just crazy or off the wall, but if somebody wrote down and you said that at a place like Zany's, and then somebody just wrote down what you said and then printed it somewhere, it's like, well, no, it's out of context, and like it's just, it takes that whole like part of it away almost.
Exactly.
So, you had mentioned writing Two Blondes. Award winning, modern day Smothers Brothers, I believe, is what it was referred to.
Yeah,
was that the New York Times, right?
It was.
So talk to me.
I think they said the Smothers Sisters.
The Smothers Sisters. Okay. I apologize. I want to make sure we're not misgendering here. I want to make sure that we're above the level. But I wanted to ask, like, so you said it was based off of your one person play, and then sounds like you from what I've read and seen, you then started working with Savannah Brown and co-creating there. So
you really did your research.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I became a fan of yours when I saw you. So I've watched your videos, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on so bad. And
thank you.
No, thank you. And like I said, thank you for responding to kids. I've said it before, but if you got a podcast, send somebody a message on Instagram. You never know. Worst they can say is no,
Love it.
But I want to ask, so like, you start off, you've spent all this time working as a one-person show. You get a partner, you develop it into a two-person show. You start, performing it off Broadway, and then you start seeing like people coming, and like you're getting like a good reaction, and then all of a sudden you're winning awards, and the New York Times is writing about you. Like when we're talking about like highs and lows, like what was that part of your life like for you? I mean, feelings and what were you going through?
That was a crazy time because I was living in New York, and it was just what was really hard about doing a one-person or a two-person show like that was we had a residency, so we were there every month, and we were doing the same show every month. So because it was a show, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like a improv thing. Or so what got really hard was every month doing the promotion and getting people there, because you could get a really big crowd, but then those people have already seen it. They're not going to come back to see the same exact show. So
Right.
what was really hard was getting all these people, and that made it really stressful doing all the business side of it. It wasn't like we could just go on stage and perform. We were also doing all the business around it. But then there were so many highs. Like you said, getting a review in the New York Times was like a huge dream come true. I had written out a fake New York Times review when I moved to New York, and I had it on my refrigerator. And then it was like kind of, the secret, just like putting it out there into the world. And it was a very exciting day. I got to swap my fake New York Times out with the real thing. So that was a huge high. And it was just a whirlwind. New York is so crazy anyway, just the energy there. It's so hustle and bustle. It's go, go, go. And that's how I felt when I look back on New York. My life was just go, 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 go. And there were highs and there were lows, and Did I answer the question?
No, you did. And I will tell you,
Okay.
I mean, you are much more modest than me, because if the New York Times ever writes anything about this podcast, I'm going to blow it up like 5,000 times. And this is going to be this entire wall. It's just going to be that article. So,
I love it. Well, I definitely have like 4 copies of that newspaper in my bedroom.
Well, I think it reminds me of, there's that story about Jim Carrey that he wrote himself, or he wrote his parents the check for $1 million.
Yep. Oh, I've heard that story.
Yeah. He's like, I drove up to the Hollywood Hills and sat underneath that sign, and, but it's, I think it just goes to show that, like, because obviously I think sitting down and writing your own, New York Times article is a good indicator of the way that you feel about yourself and the potential that you see in yourself. And I think there's a lot of really creative people out there who would probably have, some crazy successful career or something like that, but they're missing that, where I have a friend who he's been working on a record for years and years and years, and he just never put it out because he was like, I don't think it's there, and finally he was like, that's it. It's going out into the world. And he's been getting a really good response back, but it was his, his thing for so long, because he just like, I don't know if people are going to like it as much as I do. So I think it speaks volume to the type of personality that you have, where you're like, I'm going to write this down because this is going to happen, and I'm going to swap, you know what I mean? So
I also was a lot more confident in myself when I was like 22, 23. I had all the confidence in the world. I had just graduated college. I was like I was in another off-Broadway show when I didn't write, but that gave me like all this confidence, and I thought I was the bee's knees. And life has really just, I don't have that confidence anymore that I had at 22 and 23 when I did write that out. And I think there's so much to being like a beginner or new and not knowing yet how much rejection is involved in the business, and just like being wide-eyed and believing you can do it, because a lot did happen the first few years I started acting in the real world. There was a lot, because I think I just had this energy that has like slowly faded throughout the years, because it gets harder and you get more jaded. But man,
become more of a realist.
Yeah,
you become
more of a realist.
This is like, actually going to be quite hard.
Yeah, what am I doing with my life? What's going on? But at the beginning, there's just so much. I don't know. I think it helped that I was younger when I did that.
Well, I don't know. I think it's still got to be. I mean, just with what you're talking about, as far as like, there's a lot of rejections, but you're still working, you're still pursuing the career, you're still finding those opportunities. It's like, yeah, it's hard, but it's, again, I think it's very evident that you have a passion for it that kind of keeps that fire lit,
You're also talking to me during quarantine, and
The saddest time ever.
I've been so low about like, I think you keep hearing me being like, God, this is brutal. And if you were talking to me probably at a different stage in life, I wouldn't be saying all this. I think I'm just going through a phase during quarantine where I've really had to like not work. There's no, obviously like comedy isn't happening and stuff isn't happening. And I think I've just been in this like state where I've been starting to question everything and just all that is probably what you're hearing on this podcast, where I'm not as bitter towards comedy usually.
No, it's
I'm usually more upbeat about it.
I mean, I think for people who are listening that, again, I think that a lot of people, you see your favorite comedian on TV or, you watch it and you don't realize that there's a complete other side or it's so much work. I think people are like, oh, well, this person's just funny. So he gets up and tells jokes, or she, gets up and tells jokes and does sketches, where it's like, no, like there's people sitting at home for hours on a laptop and then, reciting stuff in the mirror and be like, well, I got to take this piece out. Let me, if you don't, if you're not someone who's fascinated with that world or in that world, you're just like, oh yeah, Kevin Hart's just naturally funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And unless you just have all this money, you can't just be, as a comedian, like, unfortunately, you can't just be a full-time comedian for years. Like, you also have to have other jobs to support yourself. So the writing, the comedy, and performing that is always after a full day's work. And it's just like really exhausting sometimes to have to like be creative when you just want to watch a TV show or hang out with friends, or it takes a lot of dedication and discipline when sometimes it's just easier to just take a nap,
Well, it's almost like it's like the Taylor Swift thing, and I hope nobody's listening being like, what are you about to say about Taylor? But
oh my gosh, I'm a Swiftie.
She's super talented and a really good songwriter, but she was in the position where she had parents who had a lot of money that were like, hey baby, focus on this, we love you, we believe in you, where that's not everybody's situation. It's
well, that's why I find so many YouTubers are like in high school. It's because they're being fully supported. They don't have to pay the bills. They're able to 100% focus on whatever their YouTube channel is or
their
whatever
makeup
their
tutorials
TikTok is. They can just do that. And that's why I think so many young people are so successful in those atmospheres, because they can just put 100% focus into it. If they're able to be supported like that.
Yeah, I think you're right, because they, if you're in a situation as like a 16-year-old kid that you've got a nice computer and you've got a nice, camera set up, and, I don't have to worry about where I'm paying the bills or anything like that. I will say, I think the big difference though is that with YouTubers, especially in that age, I don't know how well that translates live. Like, sure, people may go to see it, but is it worth the money for that experience, or is it something that really only translates that well on YouTube? You know what I mean?
Probably just YouTube.
But
yeah,
someone like you who's like, I create web content and I write, and it's like, you can go see it. It's like, oh, like you put on a show, like you closed out your set in Nashville playing guitar and bringing somebody up on stage, and like it was.
I was wondering if I did that for that.
Yeah, so it's, like I think you hit in a way that just shows that like, okay, like this is what somebody can do when they really put in the work. And again, like, I don't know, I think there's something about someone who has obviously gone through ups and downs that when they get that opportunity, they come out the top, they shine a little bit brighter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it means more.
Yeah, it's like you polish that diamond yourself,
Yeah, totally.
Well, I know you have to get out. You've got a show tonight, a Zoom show. Let me ask you this before I kind of get to the last thing I want to talk to you about, but how has it been kind of transitioning into that digital comedy world? Because,
Oh
kind of
my
talking about like
God.
what translates and what doesn't. I mean, how's
Oh,
that been?
let me tell you, I hate it. It is so hard. Any comedian I've talked to too about this is like, it's the worst. Because if I haven't done a Zoom stand-up show for a few months because I really hate it so much. And I said yes to this one, but not this podcast, the Zoom show.
You're like, I hate being here right now.
No, podcasts I love. For Zoom stand-up shows, it's really uncomfortable because there's a slight delay. So you say a joke and then there's no laughter. So you go, okay, well that bombed. Let me recover. And while you're like going into something else, then they start laughing. And then you have to pause because they were laughing at the joke you were just saying previously. And the time is really off and it's been so painful. I was doing a lot of Zoom stand-up shows right at the beginning of quarantine. And so eventually I was like getting the hang of it, but it's still just not the same as live because when you're on stage and actually in the room, there's like this energy and you can play off of it, and there's no energy to play off of, and it feels like people are just like, when people just polite laugh because they don't want it to be awkward. That's just what it feels like when you're doing a online stand-up show.
Yeah, I imagine, that's the one thing I've always hated. I kind of hate it and I kind of love it. But when you watch like any of the 24-hour news network and they've got like live from Dallas, we're with Congressman so-and-so, and they ask a question and then he's just sitting there. And then like 5 seconds go by and it's like, well, yes, actually we're working on this bill.
Yes.
It's like, it's very, especially I like it a lot when it's like a liberal reporter questioning someone very Republican. So there's like a delay before he says something hateful to him. He's just smiling, and then it's like, now I'm gonna go for your throat.
Yes.
But so was this something that like, because I'm sure at the beginning of this, when you started doing Zoom shows, you weren't like, oh, well, this is going to be the next, 6,
Right.
7, 8 months of my life. So is it just like, because I can imagine, I know going to stand-up shows that there's something about being in that room with other people, and I'm not a very religious person, but like, I think there is something that kind of connects people's spirits when you're all able to laugh at the same thing and like you feel each other's energy. So, I can imagine that like not like getting up and trying to tell your jokes and stuff like that without that feeling is probably very like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, it is. It feels like it just feels like you're like, okay, everybody, I'm gonna tell you something to make you laugh. And it's so unorganic. Whereas like if you go to a stand-up show and you're in the audience, you're there to laugh, and it's like an environment and there's drinks, and it's a very different feel than just like talking to people sitting in their living room. And a lot of times people are they're not muted, so you're hearing people having conversations or like dogs barking or things just interrupting the whole time. It's really weird.
Yeah, I kind of like, I don't know. It's I can imagine it's just got like, I think another thing too would be like, my wife and I'm a big fan of The Office. It's my
Me
favorite show.
too. Yes.
Oh, well, you have to come back because
Love
we can talk about that for hours. But you know, quarantine happened and there wasn't. So I found out that there was like a Zoom trivia. So for 8 weeks in a row, we played Office Zoom trivia.
See, that sounds amazing.
But
I like that.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. But I'm kind of wondering if for shows, if there's a lot of people kind of that same mindset are like, well, I'm not doing anything and this is a Zoom comedy show, so like let me check it out. And then it's not somebody who knows your work or is like, oh well, I've seen her on Where My Mom's At, or I saw her when she was in town. Like it's just, well, I'm just gonna tune in and hope it's something that I enjoy.
It's kind of, it's interesting. We'll see how it goes since I haven't done it in a while. But yeah, it's kind of just, it's very different. I have been doing, maybe I can send a link to this. I've been doing a weekly show where it's not stand-up, but it's comedy. And it's just like, we've been a lot of times like going over my stand-up set, and then other comedians have to guess the punchline, or like
that's your workshop series that you're doing, right?
It's called The Exciting Room. It's on YouTube Live.
Yeah, because I saw something that you put out that was, I'm workshopping these jokes.
Yeah. So it's kind of different every week. I'm just the co-host of it. The host is the one that like decides what's happening. But that actually has been a lot of fun, because it's not like just telling jokes that I've prepared. It's more organic, and it feels like the right tone for a Zoom show.
Well, like people are tuning in for almost like a TV show or like a comedy experience instead of like, all right, tell me some jokes.
The audience participates in it, and it's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. Well, yeah, please send the link, because like I said, I'm a fan of yours, and the whole reason I started this podcast is I wanted to find people that I thought were interesting or talented, and be like, how can I help put that out into the world?
I love that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, I've got a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you about, but you're a busy human being.
We can push it. I mean, I have till technically, I guess, 6:50.
Well, I know, but I want to make sure I'm giving you, your warm up time or whatever you need. I'm just, like I said, I'm grateful for any time that you're able to spare, and you're a 21st century woman. You got to handle your stuff, and I completely understand that. What I did want to ask, so, speaking of co-hosting, and, you had mentioned that you love podcasts, I could not let you go without talking about Generation Gab, which is available.
Aren't you a doll?
Well, it's available everywhere. You can get it on Apple Podcasts. I believe you guys also put it like clips and stuff up on YouTube, right?
Yes. We have a Patreon page, so the patrons get the video version.
Okay, cool.
But I've been putting all the clips on Instagram.
Okay.
So that's probably best. And
I
then
won't tell anybody. No.
Oh no, like I put out like small clips on Instagram.
No,
the full thing is for the patrons. But yeah, that's been so much fun. I've been doing it with John Lear, who you said you knew him from Quick Draw and 10 Items or Less.
Yes.
So many
Quick Draw, 10 Items or Less. And then I think a lot of people who are listening, if you remember the Geico Caveman, I think that's what most people
Geico
probably know.
So that's actually funny, working with John Lear. That was another situation, like how I wrote out the New York Times article. I used to send myself an email that would come in every day on my inbox. I used to be a lot more into manifesting. I should probably get back into it. I would send myself an email that was quote unquote from John Lear, being like, "Hi Chase, I want to work on a project with you. These are the dates, blah, blah, blah." And then that's how that kind of, he randomly reached out and asked me to do the podcast after like me putting it out so much that I wanted to work with him.
I just imagine one day you're like, check my email from my John Lear, like, oh, damn, like that's a John Lear email.
Well, the first thing that happened, the reason I was doing that is because I did a pilot with John Lear. It was like a Eva Longoria pilot that didn't go anywhere, but that's how I met him. So then I wanted to like continue doing that type of, it was a comedy, all improv TV show, and that's what he's known for. So I just like kept putting it out there, and then that happened, and now we're working on a TV show together. That's awesome. Yeah, we have a shopping deal. So we've been working on that. I mean, nothing is set in stone or anything. We're at the very beginning, but that was kind of a manifestation as well.
That's awesome. Well, I won't ask for details on what it's about, because I know, if you're still shopping around, I don't want you to spoil anything.
Oh, but I can spoil. I don't know how good of a researcher you are. If you know that I was in a pop group with 12 girls.
Weren't you in a pop group with JC Chazé?
There we go. Chazé? Okay, you have done all your
He's
research.
The dude in NSYNC that wasn't Justin Timberlake, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay. So it's like a mockumentary based on that.
Oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Like I love mockumentary as as a like format for narrative anyway. Like, you know, The Office, my wife's a big Modern Family fan, stuff like that. So
same.
Well, I definitely am hoping that gets made, because I would imagine that would be very, very funny, and there's probably a lot of room for like a lot of like silly and fun situations when you're.
Yes, and see that actually I would get to play a character there. I wouldn't be myself really, so that always excites me as well.
That's awesome. Well, you know, like I said, I know we're kind of pushing it here, and I just like I said, I really wanted to say thank you for being here. And guys, if you are listening, please follow Chase on Instagram. Please check out Generation Gab. For those who don't know, and definitely tell me if you think I'm explaining this correctly, but
yes,
you know, Jean Lear is a little bit older than you, right? You're technically millennial. I believe he's like Gen X. So here's a topic. What are the different, you know, from two different age groups? What is your perspective? Things like that. It's very, very interesting and very, very funny. So Apple Podcasts, and you know what? They're on Patreon. You can watch it. Spend some money.
No,
You're in quarantine. You're not doing
$1.
You already.
Is Johnversations on Patreon?
It is not yet. I haven't earned the right yet. So
yes.
So I'm thankful for the people that do listen, and I don't know, maybe down the line I'll hit that Howard Stern Patreon level.
Yeah.
So, but you know, people are in quarantine. They're racking up credit card debt anyway. Just put an extra $1 on there.
What's an extra $1, huh?
Well, to kind of close it out, I mean, if people want to, you know, check out Generation Gab, if they want to see any of your work, what is the best way for them to do that?
You know, I think Instagram is a great way. Chase_O'Donnell. And I pretty much post all my stuff there. Like if there's something important, I'll post about it. I have a website, but I don't really keep it up to date. ChaseO'Donnell.com. And that's really the only plugs I need.
Awesome. Well, your Instagram is awesome. I'm definitely going to be stealing that black and white photo of you in the boxing gloves for a little promotion for this. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. So
that was from one of those secret comedy shows where you do comedy in like a boxing ring.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, like I said, I know you've got a show, and I'll make sure I get you out of here on time, but thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Guys, again, please take some time. You got your phone in your hand already. You're listening to the show. Instagram, y'all have one. Chase_O'Donnell. We'll link it up in the show notes. We'll put those articles in there as well. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. Chase, will you stick around for me for a minute just when we wrap up?
Oh, of course. And thank you so much for the plug. Oh, would I appreciate a follow. Thank you.
No problem. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week. That's it. Episode 25. We're out of here.
Bye.
Bye.